Hey, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you give us a quick introduction of who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Ori, and I work on decentralized governance and basically mainly blockchain-based things. So smart contracts, smart contract programming, and like a lot of architecture around that. Right now, I'm working on a project where we're building tools and helping organizations and groups of people DAOify, so create decentralized organizations that are totally just based on software. Yeah.
Cool. So what would you say is one of your best definitions of distributed governance?
Yeah, so I guess it's a tricky thing because governance in a lot of ways is already designed to be distributed. It's so big groups of people can come to decisions. But the difference with like distributed governance would be that it's like radically transparent and radically participatory. So instead of voting for someone and then like waiting for 4 years to vote again, it's a process that is continuous. Yeah.
Why do you think this is important?
Well, I think it's been an ideal or like a goal for a lot of governance systems, but in the past we haven't really had ways of doing it practically, so we took shortcuts, and now we don't have to take those shortcuts anymore. And it's pressing because we see in world politics all the time the pitfalls of putting people into power who are unaccountable to the people who put them there.
What do you think are some of the most important considerations about this technology, things we need to watch out for?
So specifically with like blockchain technology, which is what a lot of people are using to experiment with these new forms of distributed governance, is trusting the code too much and thinking that it's like autonomous or AI driven, because it's not. Like the systems that people like here are building, for example, usually are still people making the decisions. So you still need to make sure people are educated and understand the decisions at hand. We use this word autonomy a lot, and it gets misinterpreted. It's not that we want decisional autonomy. We don't want decisions to be made by computer systems, but we want operational autonomy. We want when people do make decisions, they know with perfect certainty that they will be executed. Yeah.
Over the last few days, we've talked a lot about the different models of distributed governance. What do you think are some of the best ways to implement this?
Yeah. So there's a lot of talk about models and mechanism design, and it's really the implementation and the execution that's the hard part. So I think some of the most promising things are a couple of the protocols that are sort of in beta right now in the blockchain space. Some of them have live DAOs on them, a DAO being a decentralized autonomous organization. And it'll really depend on the use cases, I think. I don't think it's about finding a perfect model. But it's about finding the perfect model matching to a use case. So it's like you think of it as an analogy to like the product world, like product market fit. It's not just about the product. It's not just about the market. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the biggest challenges to having distributed governance models being adopted?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is kind of the questions you brought up initially, which are, what's the point of this? Because if people don't understand a reason for it, and if people who care about it aren't able to articulate those reasons, then no one will care. So I think the biggest problem isn't that technical things won't be solved, but that people won't care, like apathy. Why should I care about voting? Why should I care about participating in public life? As long as people like my posts and I have a good job, I don't care about anything else, right? Yeah.
And what do you think are some of the possible risks of these technologies being implemented?
I think there's gonna be a lot of quote-unquote disasters. We already saw one with the DAO hack about 2 years ago, where over $100 million worth of Ether was put into these smart contracts that were supposed to be controlled by a group of voters. And there was just literally a bug in the code. And so an attacker within days drained all of the money, and then it caused a big dispute in the community. So I think it's gonna be a mix of being overly quick to put real value into these things that aren't really built out yet, but also them being kind of used for purposes that people aren't okay with, right? Because when it's software, people can do whatever they want, and we disagree all the time on everything. So you're gonna see a lot of, you shouldn't do that, like, that's not, something that groups of people have like coordinated to do before, but people can just do it a lot of times anyways. Yeah.
What do you think are some of the biggest opportunities if we do succeed in implementing these systems?
That's interesting. I think it can change a lot. And the biggest opportunities, I think of it from like a perspective of my day-to-day life, right? So most people spend most of their time working for someone else, right? You work for a company, maybe you're even self-employed, but you have all these like clients, right? So that is a structure of our economy that that goes unquestioned, that we don't really think about. But I think what some of these peer-to-peer protocols could enable is us actually just working for each other and no value being extracted in the middle by a third party, right? So you can picture all that value right now that's going to like shareholders and boards of directors that are like electing managers and stuff like that. All that value could actually just go to the supply and demand sides of the market. So we could be bringing like marginal costs of rendering services and creating goods like basically down close to zero. And so people wouldn't have to do things they didn't want to do all day because they would be getting the actual value that they give to the world around them. So they would be able to afford whatever they want. That's the really like long answer, end goal, kind of like utopian version, if you can call it that.
Cool.
Yeah.
What people, movements, or organizations have you most excited or optimistic about the future?
Yeah, so right now I think the crypto space is really interesting because you have what started as just techies getting excited about code, and then you had a wave of finance type people coming in because they saw opportunities to make money, but also to like rethink the way we use money in interesting ways. And now you see something more interesting happening, which is designers, artists, workers, all sorts of people are getting interested. So to me, like that is the most interesting and high potential movement right now. And a big part of that is not just crypto, but things like platform cooperativism. And these things have a history, and a lot of times we forget that, but that's why I think it's interesting to look at the recent past, like things like, Occupy Wall Street, these other movements that excited people in ways that were like disjointed from their immediate past. Yeah.
And what is your own vision for the future, a positive future?
Yeah, I think a positive future is what I was hitting at earlier, where we work for the projects we want to work for, and we're able to really efficiently match people with needs with people with the ability to provide those needs. And so there isn't waste in our time. So people are happier because they're participating in not only in projects that are commercial, right, or like traditionally thought of as commercial, but also participating in public life. That's kind of like fizzled away as something that's talked about in the mainstream as something that's important. We talk about what politicians are doing all the time, but we never think about how we can actually all seriously participate in that political process.
Yeah, so many other things that we could be doing. Like we could value childcare a lot more. Taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. Art.
Yeah, exactly. Care in general is one of these things that is always going to be humans can do for each other. We talk a lot about AI taking all the jobs. But AI is never going to raise your child, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're always going to have to take care of each other. So that's exciting that we can focus more on those things than producing goods and coming up with financial instruments to move money around. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are some of your big takeaways from this event?
This event has been interesting for me because I usually approach these problems from the crypto side. So things like mechanism design. But those can be removed a lot of times from people's realities. So what people do for a living, discrimination problems. And so a lot of people at this event were coming at this not only from my angle, but from other angles, like I mentioned, platform co-ops. And people were actually involved in cooperative distributed governance systems, whatever forms they may take. So my biggest takeaway is that even though I'm in my own bubble working on problems that I think are interesting, there's other people and like allies all around the world in different spheres, and yet we're all converging on similar like themes and solutions to sort of global problems that everyone's aware of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Great.
Yeah.
Anything else?
What was the most interesting thing you learned that you didn't know before at this event?
I'm gonna cheat, and I'm gonna actually talk about something that I suggested, but it was people's reactions that were the surprising part. So we just had a workshop before lunch about memes and how a really important part of this work is to distill these complex processes or just complex systems like mechanism design, cooperative economics, these things that we think about all the time, into symbols that are images. Going beyond words, we've all spent hours reading, right? Not everyone has that time. So a lot of times you need symbols and powerful images to catalyze people. And so what I learned is that people all have their own very strong ideas about what that will look like. And so while we all use the same words like decentralized or distributed governance, that signifier actually has a plurality of signified meanings that it maps to for different people. And working through the murkiness is, I think, what's been the most interesting part of this conference, yeah.
As far as kind of distilling what we've been talking about as far as decentralization, and not just that, also distribution and governance, what do you think, in your opinion, has been maybe a central meme that could come from this?
That is the million meme question, but someone told me just this one phrase that I thought encapsulated really well, which was, we can do better.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope that these things can be, people can be creative about what these symbols and memes can form and turn into, and that they can also be multimedia, right? Like images, videos, jokes. So
Cool.
We'll see
Cool.
what happens.
Thanks for joining us.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.